Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone who's here and everyone who's watching at home, online. I have to remind members we're being webcasted and everyone seated here must use the microphone to be heard on the webcast. There are no scheduled fire alarms, so if one goes off, it's for real. There are 2 exits in this room, the one through the double doors over there and the other behind me to the right. I'm Councillor Stephen Watson, the chair. Here is Councillor Joe Thomas, vice chair. We have over there Jackie Bruce, our Section 106 programme manager. We have Rachel Lee, our legal advisor, and next to me is Peter Mannings, the committee support officer. We have James Mead, the principal planning officer, and Martin Plummer over there, the service manager for development management and enforcement. We also have over to my left Neil Button, the team leader of development management. And I would also like to introduce the council's executive member for planning and growth, Councillor Vicky Glover-Ward, who won't be taking an active part in this meeting, but is here in an observing capacity. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, just the one from Councillor Ruth Buckmaster and Councillor Stan Bull is substituting for her tonight. Thank you.
I notice Councillor Vicky Burt isn't here yet, and if she doesn't get here before we start the planning application, she won't be able to take part. So,
yeah, I mean, that's correct. If she misses a substantial proportion of the officer report, then yes, that's correct. She'd have to abstain.
So, some announcements. Remind you again to use your microphones when speaking. It's easy to forget. And another announcement is that Norman Simons, a long-serving and well-respected member of this authority and a former member of this committee, sadly passed away recently. And could I ask members and guests to observe a minute's silence? Thank you, members. Thank you, members. The audience.
I've got. I do actually have an email here from Vicky Burt giving her apologies. So yes.
All right. So we have apologies from Vicky Burt too. Do we have any declarations of interest? Well, I would just like to say that I am a member of Hertford Civic Society. I'm a member of Kingsmead Residents Association, and I'm Mayor of Hertford, so I may be considered to have some predisposition, but I want to be clear that I'm coming into this meeting with an open mind. Does anyone else? Nope, thank you. Now, we have before us the minutes of the meeting held on 9th of July 2025. If there are no amendments, can we have a proposer for the minutes?
Devonshire.
Councillor Devonshire, and a seconder, Councillor Stowe, and can we vote to approve? And any against? And abstentions? 2. Those minutes have been agreed. Thank you. Now we move on to item 5A, which is a variation, well, 324-2147/VAR, a variation of condition 53 of planning permission 3/23/2034/VAR hybrid planning application comprising full planning permission for residential dwellings up to 420 square meters for gymnasium, etc. I'm not going to read through all this, but I'll just say this is the proposed amendments include creation of 65 additional dwellings through utilising and extending roof spaces across all apartment buildings, relocation of residence gym and building from building G to building B, creation of 2 additional dwellings in building G, loss of 1 dwelling in building B, changes to internal layouts of apartment buildings, external elevation alterations to apartment buildings, amendments to landscaping and parking at land at Marshgate Drive, also known as Hart 2, Hartford SG13 7AQ. So I would like to invite James Mead to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which seeks to amend an existing planning permission at land east of Marshgate Drive, Hertford. Next slide, please. Applications under Section 73 allow applicants to apply to amend an existing planning permission by varying or removing planning conditions. Any consent granted under Section 73 takes the form of a new planning permission. This current application proposes to vary Condition 53, the approved plans condition of Planning Permission Reference 3/23/2034/VAR to allow the substitution of existing approved plans with new plans that show the changes to the scheme. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side of this slide is an aerial image of the site. The site consists of approximately 3.48 hectares of vacant brownfield land. This land was formerly a gasworks site, however was cleared a number of years ago and remains disused. You can see from the aerial image that the site is currently made up of 2 parcels, a southern parcel and a northern parcel. This current application only proposes changes to the development on the northern parcel. Between the 2 parcels and outside of the site boundary is an operational timber yard. The site is located on the eastern side of Marshgate Drive and to the north of Mead Lane. The surrounding area is mixed in character, with modern apartment blocks and terraced housing present to the west, whereas to the east there are various employment uses within the designated Mead Lane employment area. Directly to the north of the site is the River Lee navigation and the towpath that runs alongside the river. Flood zones 2 and 3 extend over the eastern part of the northern parcel. The site is located close to the centre of Hertford. To the southwest is the Hertford Town Centre. In addition, Hertford East Railway Station is situated a short distance to the southwest, and there are also bus stops in the area. The site, together with the adjacent timber yard, were allocated in the district plan for a mixed-use development of around 200 homes. The image on the right-hand side shows the site allocation. Next slide, please. This is a further aerial image of the site and the surrounding area. In this image, you can see the vacant nature of the application site. In addition, on the left-hand side of the image, you can see the modern apartment blocks and the terraced housing, while on the right-hand side, you can see the adjacent employment premises. At the top of the image, you can see the River Lee navigation. Next slide, please. This is an image facing eastwards across the northern parcel. Again, in this image, you can see the disused and vacant nature of the existing site. Next slide, please. This is an image facing northwards along Marshgate Drive. The northern parcel of the application site is beyond the hoarding in the background of this image. On the right-hand side of this image, you can see the operational timber yard. while on the left-hand side, you can see the modern apartment blocks. Next slide, please. This is an image facing eastwards from Marshgate Drive Bridge. In this image, you can see the proximity of the northern parcel to the River Lee navigation and the associated towpath. You can also see the adjacent employment uses in the background. Next slide, please. This is an image facing westwards along the towpath. The northern parcel of the site is on the left-hand side. In this image, you can again see the relationship between the site and the River Lee navigation. In addition, the modern apartment blocks are evident in the background of this image. Next slide, please. The original application on this site was a hybrid planning application with full planning permission granted for the residential element of the scheme, comprising of 375 homes, including 56 shared ownership units, which constituted 15% affordable housing. A gymnasium was also proposed, co-working floor space, improvements to Marshgate Drive, parking provision, vehicular accesses, open space and landscaping. Outline planning permission was granted for the employment element of the scheme, including 2,200 square metres of employment floor space, together with parking, vehicular access and landscaping. This application was initially refused by the council on 11 grounds. However, this decision was appealed by the applicant at this time. Subsequently, the appeal was allowed with planning permission granted. Full planning permission for the residential element of the scheme was implemented in June 2021. However, work ceased in approximately April 2022, with the applicant citing increasing build costs and poor sales as the main reasons for stopping works. Nonetheless, the implementation of the full planning application means that this planning permission remains extant and works could recommence at any time. On the other hand, works were never commenced on the outline planning permission. This outline planning permission and the employment element of the scheme has now expired and therefore can no longer be implemented. Next slide, please. The image on the screen shows the site layout for the consented appeal scheme. On the northern parcel, you can see the 5 apartment buildings, together with the vehicular access from Marshgate Drive and the internal spine road. On the western side of the northern parcel is proposed to provide a locally equipped area for play, while the green space on the eastern side is a flood compensation area. On the southern parcel, you can see the 29 houses, which would be delivered as terrace properties. The employment uses were proposed to be delivered at the southernmost part of the site, fronting onto Mead Lane. Next slide, please. The original scheme was amended for a Section 73 application in 2024. This is the most recent planning permission on the site. The amendments included a reduction in the gym floor space, the creation of an additional 5 apartments, the provision of air source heat pumps for buildings G and H, provision of electric vehicle charging points, and alterations to landscaping and the parking layout. Next slide, please. This current application seeks to amend the most recent planning permission on the site. Changes are only proposed to the development on the northern parcel. The proposed amendments include the creation of 65 additional dwellings for extending, converting, and altering the roofs of the approved apartment blocks, the relocation of the gym, the creation of 2 additional dwellings in building G, the loss of 1 dwelling in building A/B, internal reconfiguration of the apartment buildings, elevation alterations to the apartment buildings, and changes to landscaping and the parking layout. For assessment of this current application, we are only considering these changes. We are not revisiting other parts of the already consented development. Next slide, please. This table shows the housing delivery for each of the applications on the site. This current amended proposal would result in the number of dwellings provided on the site totaling 446. Next slide, please. The allocation of Hart 2 as a strategic site allocation in the district plan means that the principle of residential development on the site is established. The application site, together with the adjacent timber yard, were allocated for the provision of around 200 homes as part of a mixed-use development. Officers acknowledge that this proposed development would result in a total housing delivery significantly exceeding the around 200 homes allocation figure. However, this housing allocation figure is out of date in light of the 2020 appeal decision, where the inspector allowed a scheme for 375 homes on the site. Noting this appeal decision, and given the Highway Authority's current position, there is no principal reason for capping the quantum of development to 200 or 375 homes, subject to the changes to the consented scheme being acceptable in all other respects. In addition, the provision of 66 further dwellings on this sustainable brownfield site is a significant benefit of this scheme that attracts direct support from sections 5 and 11 of the NPPF. The uplift in dwellings on the site also means that the scheme can make a valuable contribution to the council's housing land supply at a time when there is a housing land supply deficit. Next slide, please. The amended scheme would deliver an additional 42 one-bedroom flats and 24 two-bedroom flats. The table on the right-hand side of this slide identifies the overall housing mix that would be provided on the site. You can see that the scheme would still deliver a high proportion of flatted units. Next slide, please. In terms of the viability of the amended scheme, a table on the screen identifies some of the key figures from the applicant's viability assessment and the viability review by the council's consultant. National Planning Practice Guidance and other relevant guidance advises that 15 to 20% of the gross development value is generally a suitable profit rate for developers. Any profit rate below 15 to 20% is therefore in general terms deemed unviable. In this instance, the council's consultant and the applicant agree that the consented scheme is unviable. The council's consultant indicates that the consented scheme would only have a profit rate of 10.68%. In order to improve the viability position of the scheme and ultimately deliver the development, the applicant has brought forward this amended proposal, including the uplift in the number of dwellings. The applicant's viability assessment indicates that the profit rate of this currently proposed scheme, with no affordable housing included, would only be 8.6%. On the other hand, the council's consultant considers that the profit rate, with no affordable housing included, would be 13.41%. While these profit rates would be below the 15 to 20% baseline set in planning guidance, the amended scheme would generate a higher profit rate and therefore would be more viable than the consented scheme. However, officers accept that as the profit rate would be below 15 to 20%, it is not viable to provide affordable housing on the site. Next slide, please. While the viability position of the scheme means the potential to deliver affordable housing is highly constrained, the applicant is still seeking to provide the 56 affordable units as agreed in the consented scheme. This would equate to 12.6% affordable housing. The affordable units are proposed to be provided in buildings G and H. The constrained viability position, however, means that it is not feasible to secure typical affordable housing provisions in the Section 106 legal agreement. Instead, a cascade mechanism is proposed to be built into the Section 106, which would firstly seek to deliver on-site affordable units before alternative options for the provision of discount market sale dwellings or financial contributions are considered. The first step would involve the applicant promoting the sale of 56 units to a registered provider of affordable housing. The registered provider could then seek to acquire the 56 units for using any available grant funding. Once the registered provider has acquired the units, they could then bring these units forward as either shared ownership or affordable rent homes. If the applicant is unable to reach an agreement with a registered provider, despite engaging for an agreed period of time, the units would at this stage be switched to discount market sale dwellings. These units would be marketed for sale at a discount of 20% of the market value. Finally, if any of the 56 discount market sale dwellings were to remain unsold after an agreed marketing period, then the units would at this stage be changed to open market dwellings for sale. An equivalent to 20% of the open market value of any unit would, however, be paid to the council as an affordable housing payment in lieu. This could be used to provide affordable housing elsewhere in the district. Therefore, the cascade mechanism would firstly seek to deliver on-site shared ownership or affordable rent homes before then considering the alternatives of discount market sale dwellings or financial contributions. This is considered to be the optimal position to reach in seeking to secure some affordable homes on the site, while still ensuring that the development remains deliverable. Next slide, please. In terms of the design changes, it's proposed to add roof extensions to all the apartment buildings in order to accommodate 65 additional dwellings. The top image shows the consented street elevation of building A to B, and the bottom image shows the proposed street elevation of building A/B. You can see from these images that it's proposed to infill voids between gable ends and construct additional roof space above flat roofs. Other elevational alterations are also proposed, including the addition of new balconies. Next slide, please. These are the western side elevations of building A/B. The top image shows the consented side elevation, whereas the bottom image shows the proposed side elevation. From these images, you can see that inset terraces and roof lights are proposed to be incorporated into the roofscape of the buildings. Next slide, please. These are section drawings along the canal. The top image shows the consented scheme, whereas the bottom image shows the proposed development. In these images, you can see the roof extensions across all the canal-facing apartment buildings. Next slide, please. This is a visualization facing eastwards along the canal, which shows how the completed development could look. Again, the roof extensions, inset terraces, and roof lights are evident in this image. Next slide, please. These are the street elevations for buildings G and H, which are the apartment blocks that do not front onto the canal. The top image shows the consented elevations, whereas the bottom image shows the proposed elevations. From these images, you can see that it's proposed to add roof extensions above flat roofs, while new roof lights and windows are also proposed. Next slide, please. These are the rear elevations for buildings G and H, with the consented elevation at the top and the proposed elevation at the bottom. Again, you can see the roof extensions above the flat roofs, as well as the incorporation of terraces and roof lights. Overall, the roof extensions would not increase the maximum height of the buildings, nor would they result in the buildings breaching the height restrictions of the Hart 2 master plan. Limited additional massing would be incorporated into the buildings, and features within the roofscape have been kept to a minimum. Therefore, officers consider that the proposal would be an appropriate design solution that would make effective use of the land and the consented buildings. Next slide, please. These are the floor plans of the new rooftop dwellings in building A/B and building G. All the new dwellings would meet the nationally described space standards, while the daylight and sunlight tests would be passed for all the units. The majority of the dwellings would be served by inset terraces, with those limited number of units not provided with a terrace having access to Juliet balconies. Therefore, overall, the development would deliver a good quality of accommodation for the future residents. Next slide, please. The scheme also includes some changes to landscaping proposals. The top image shows the consented landscape master plan, whereas the bottom image shows the proposed master plan. Some additional street level parking is proposed, for example, between building A and B and building C and D, as shown on the bottom image. However, the scheme also includes new green spaces, including the green link identified in the image, which provides a direct connection between the towpath and the locally equipped area of play. Overall, the scheme continues to provide a good level of soft landscaping, as confirmed by the landscape officer. Other alterations to landscaping are also proposed, including an enlarged podium, additional play provision, and changes to parking layout. However, these are considered to be relatively limited in nature and do not detract from the overall quality of the development. Next slide, please. In regard to transport and highways, this current application is accompanied by an updated transport assessment, which includes a new trip generation calculation. The trip generation figures from the transport assessment are shown on in the table on the screen. These figures indicate that the proposed scheme would only result in a limited uplift in trips when compared with the consented scheme. The Highway Authority have not objected to the application and have not indicated that the development would result in a severe impact on the local highway network. The scheme also includes a package of measures to promote sustainable and active modes of travel as an alternative to car travel. This includes a full financial contribution towards sustainable and active travel projects in the area, the delivery of off-site highway improvements, a travel plan, and travel vouchers for the new residents. Next slide, please. The proposed scheme does include an increase in the number of parking spaces when compared with the consented scheme. The overall level of parking would be below the adopted parking standards. It's considered that a level of parking provision below the adopted standards is justified in this instance due to the sustainable location of the site. The future residents would have access to services and facilities via sustainable and active travel modes, including walking, cycling, train, and bus. This means that the future residents would not be overly reliant on car ownership or car travel. In addition, the table on the right-hand side shows that the proposed parking space to dwelling ratio would be similar to that of the consented scheme. This further demonstrates that the proposed parking provision is appropriate. It's considered that this amended scheme has struck a suitable balance between meeting the parking demand arising from the development while still seeking to limit parking provision to discourage car use. Next slide, please. Moving on to the planning obligations, officers have undertaken discussions with the applicant to establish the appropriate level of financial contributions to secure, particularly given the constrained viability position of the scheme. In officers' view, it is important to maximise financial contributions, so to mitigate the impacts of the development and to allow local services to be upgraded to accommodate the additional residents. In light of this, full financial contributions based on East Herts Council and Hertfordshire County Council's latest guidance have been secured. Overall, this amended scheme would contribute over £1.4 million towards local infrastructure and services. Next slide, please. The £1.4 million contribution secured for this current application would be supplemental to the financial contributions secured through the previous applications. Therefore, as shown in this table, the overall development would make financial contributions towards local infrastructure and services totaling over £3.8 million. Next slide, please. In regard to the planning conditions, this recommendation proposes to carry over all the conditions from the first Section 73 application, which have not yet been discharged. Any conditions that have already been discharged have been altered to compliance conditions. New conditions have also been added where appropriate. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the provision of 66 additional dwellings on this sustainable brownfield site is a benefit of this amended scheme that should attract significant positive weight. This additional housing delivery would assist the council in addressing the current 5-year housing land supply deficit. In addition, the proposed uplift in dwellings would improve the viability of the scheme and assist in ensuring that the scheme is deliverable. Other benefits would result from the scheme in terms of securing financial contributions towards local infrastructure and services, supplying biodiversity net gain, and delivering either affordable homes, discount market sale dwellings, or affordable housing contributions in lieu. Officers consider that there are no adverse impacts that would outweigh the benefits of this amended scheme. Next slide, please. Therefore, officers' recommendation is that planning permission should be granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. I would also like to draw members' attention to the late representation sheet that was published prior to this meeting.
Thank you. Right, so first of all, we have Jan Goodeve, who will be speaking as an objector. Could I call it to come up? Jan Goodeve on behalf of Hertford Civic Society. And right. You have
a new timer up.
Oh, you've already got the timer up 6 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, members. Kingsmead Residents Association feel that they have already made substantial written representations and therefore don't have anything further to add verbally this evening. So on behalf of Hertford Civic Society, I will touch on a few topics, these being design, heating and cooling, and finally, viability of the scheme. Design. To quote the Conservation and Design Officer's report, we are left with a new scheme that when compared with the consented scheme is not maintaining or bettering the improved scheme, but rather the opposite. Therefore, we have concerns that some of the issues we have raised have not been thoroughly addressed and no substantial mitigation measures have been provided in return for what is a decline in overall quality of the scheme. Policy DES 4 is therefore not complied with. The potential impact of poor living conditions on health and well-being need to be acknowledged. Heating and cooling. There is an assessment available on the planning portal, and we would like to quote the following extract for members' awareness. Providing natural ventilation to the bedrooms at night via operable windows is not feasible. because of the external noise levels associated with the Hertford Gasworks site. Passive measures alone have been tested and found not to be effective for the assessed bedrooms. Therefore, mechanical ventilation via the proposed mechanical ventilation with heat recovery system is required in order to provide adequate ventilation to the bedrooms. A ventilation system that continuously supplies fresh air whilst extracting stale air, all while recovering a significant portion of heat from the outgoing air. Given the warm weather this summer and climate change, this is actually very topical. There have been several newspaper articles even this week on the subject of new build homes not coping with summer heat. Please seek assurances this evening that new Hertford residents living in these roof spaces won't have to endure similarly uncomfortable living conditions. Viability. We must move away from citing the possibility of non-development, especially such poor development, as an argument for letting through proposals that are neither policy compliant nor fit for purpose. That is what our planning framework is for, setting out standards that DMC should be upholding, rather than letting through substandard development and setting poor precedent. Just as investor returns are not a material planning consideration, so the purported opportunity cost of a vacant site is not relevant to the determination of policy compliance of the proposal under consideration. This is a highly experienced developer who have brought forward very many similar schemes, regeneration sites in need of decontamination in partnership with National Grid. They should be well informed about the task ahead that they were taking on. It's certainly not their first rodeo. Given that there has already been lawful commencement of the works on the site, this does not mean that the full planning permission, the residential part of the development, remains extant and could be resumed at any time. The irony is that the failure to develop what they already have permission for is actually negatively impacting on the authority's ability to deliver its housing target across the district, as the build-out rates are something that the authority has no control over. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have speaking for, oh, I'm sorry, I always forget this. Questions. Do any members have any questions?
Nope.
Nope. Right. Thank you again. Next we have on behalf of the application, speaking for the application, Polly Matthews on behalf of the applicant. And you have 6 minutes also.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, James, for the detailed presentation. Good evening, members. My name is Polly Matthews, and I'm a Senior Land and Planning Manager working at Berkeley St Joseph, the applicant for this proposal to speak in support of our application to vary the approved scheme at Marshgate Drive. As James noted, plan permission was first granted for this site in 2020, allowing for 375 homes, employment space, landscaping, public realm, and improved infrastructure. Since then, a variation was approved last year to make modest adjustments, including an addition of 5 homes. However, like so many other schemes across England, in the current economic climate, what was previously approved is quite simply no longer deliverable. Construction was halted in 2022 due to rising costs and market conditions, and without this variation, the site will remain stalled. This variation relates solely to the northern parcel where the apartment buildings are located and is not altering the vision of the original development. It's about securing the future and fulfilling the promise of regenerating this long vacant brownfield site into a thriving new community. This proposal, which seeks to introduce 66 additional 1- and 2-bedroom homes for a roof level conversion, is a carefully considered response to those viability challenges. The amendments are entirely within the approved building footprints. The overall height remains consistent with what has already been permitted, and the architectural language and landscaping principles follow the consented scheme. In short, this is not a new scheme, but it is a refinement of an existing one to allow for the delivery of 446 homes on a highly sustainable brownfield site. Firstly, I want to acknowledge some of the concerns raised with the consultation on highways, design and affordable housing. On highways, our transport consultant, who is here today, has noted that this proposal is for 66 apartments and should be considered on its own merits. As stated by officers in the committee report, the site is in a sustainable location within walking and cycling distance of the town centre, Tesco and other employment opportunities, as well as Hertford East Station and various bus stops. From the census, only 57% of journeys from the area are made by car, with 20% by bus and train and 18% walking and cycling. 43% additional parking spaces are proposed, which is at the same ratio as the consented scheme. This level of parking will accommodate demand. No changes are proposed to the approved access arrangements or the improvements to walking, cycling and public transport, including the provision of car club vehicles and a bus turning head included within the site. The net increase in traffic compared to the consented scheme is an additional 5 vehicles at the AM peak hour and 8 in the PM peak hour. The advice is accepted by Hertfordshire County Council. Whilst traffic has increased on some of the surrounding roads since the original consent was granted, it is at a lower than predicted when the offsite capacity assessment was undertaken. This assessment included higher levels of traffic than existing and showed no impacts. Therefore, as stated within the MPPF guidance, to resist a development proposal on transport grounds, there must be a severe impact. And from this proposal, which is within a sustainable location which generates a very low level of traffic, this is clearly not the case. On design, we've worked closely with officers to maintain architectural integrity. The changes to the roofline are subtle and sympathetic, maintaining visual massing to not affect overshadowing of neighbouring properties. It was important these changes did not affect the vision to deliver a high quality scheme, providing open space, gardens, play areas and tree-lined streets. On affordable housing, I can confirm that we've received interest from a number of registered providers to take on all 56 homes, which is really encouraging. As mentioned previously, viability constraints mean we are unable to increase the provision beyond the 56 homes already secured. This position has been tested through independent review and is agreed by the local planning authority. This brings me to my final point, and perhaps the most important. This application is about deliverability. The site has been consented, the principle of development has been established, yet remains dormant. This variation allows us to bring back to life a site that has stood empty for years since its previous use as a gasworks, allowing for us to complete the regeneration of a key site in Hertford, as set out within the local plan. Lastly, I would also like to thank the planning team who have been proactive and engaged from the initial pre-application meeting. Therefore, I respectfully ask you to support the officer's recommendation and approve this application to get this exciting scheme moving forward again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Questions?
Now, questions, members. And I have Councillor Dunlop first, then Councillor Estop, then Councillor Copley.
Thank you. I've got a question about air quality. Condition 39 of the officer's report suggests prior to occupation of the development, it hereby permitted a scheme for protecting and enhancing the air quality of future occupiers of the proposed development shall be submitted to and approved in writing, etc. Could you give me some idea of how you intend protecting and improving the air quality?
So that's in terms of active modes of transport. So obviously trying to move people from using their car. So we've got cycle lanes, we've got cycle stores across all buildings for all homes, visitor parking, and then also car club spaces. In terms of improving the air quality throughout MVHR as well, also within the properties. So where homes can't open the windows or don't want to open the windows, they'll be able to have that MVHR to help.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that improves or protects from where we are today. If we take today as the reference point, then I'm not really sure how that improves things. I can see it lessens the impact that there inevitably will be.
Are you Councillor Dunlop, are you debating here or are you asking a question?
I think there was a hint of a question there.
I think we'll make your question clearer.
Well, the response that you give me doesn't satisfy what I would have expected. Can you enhance your response to ensure me or reassure me that the air quality will be improved or enhanced?
In terms of an improvement to the air quality, I guess there is no sense of an improvement to the air quality compared to what's there at the moment. Is that what you're inferring to?
Well, I'm just going by what the text is in the officer's report here and the condition of
And
air
just to be
quality.
quite clear here, we're talking about this application, which is an additional homes. It's this additional 60. Is that right?
Well, I'm just reading what's on the paper in front of me here. So if that's
I
what we
think,
were discussing, then that's what we're discussing.
I think we've covered that.
Yeah, and there is a condition for the additional 66 homes in relation to air quality as well. So that would be addressed.
Yeah. So if it's conditioned, then I'm quite satisfied that that's answered in the report. Councillor Estop.
Can I ask you two questions?
Yeah.
First of all, why could you tell us something about the costs of doing the work that you've done so far? So the costs arising from the site works that you've done, and why that wasn't covered by your risk register.
Yes, of course. Yes. So in terms of receiving consent back in 2020 and getting started on site back in 2021, works were undertaken with National Grid, sorry. So that was kind of established and the cost of happened there or occurred. It's more in terms of the costs in terms to build it, in terms of inflation since then. Bill costs have just skyrocketed, and it's just trying to alleviate that and how we can do that and by improving the site.
So it's not the costs that you've already incurred; it's the anticipated build costs of the new buildings.
Yeah.
The second question is, we hear that part of the viability problem is poor sales. How will adding 66 new homes, help with the sales, because they're all the same? So how does that work, and what are you doing to improve sales? We're in the middle of Hertford.
So on that point, we actually haven't gone out to the market yet with any of these properties. That was just more a reference in terms of the market value. There was a dip in terms of market values. So it's kind of establishing that they have gone up since then, and hopefully they are on the rise. So then to address that in terms of the build costs and then the uplift in sales revenue as well.
And does this all come into your risk assessments?
Yes.
As a company?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Copley.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify something. So when you were speaking, you referred to figures about what percentage of journeys were taken by different levels of types of transport and cars, etc. And I just wondered where those figures came from.
So the most up-to-date census. So back in 2021, when the census was updated, from that people filled in how they travelled to and from and around the area. So it came from that.
Okay, so it's the full area. We're not looking at, obviously then applying it to the people moving to these flats, but it's not actually a survey that looks at particularly at this small area.
I would have to confirm on that one,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to try and understand
Yeah.
what we were relying on in terms of transport. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My question involves heat pumps, which I know you're going to utilise. I just wondered where they were going and what types. I know they're air source heat pumps. Are they in tandem with photovoltaic panels?
Yeah, so in terms of the exact model specification, I'm not too sure on that one, but in terms of the pump itself, it's an internal cylinder that's going to be located within each apartment.
Right.
So it goes directly through up to the roof. So it's kind
They're
of
generally large, aren't they? And I just wondered how they would.
Yeah, so we've got quite large.
That's 440 heat pumps. That was my next question.
Yeah,
sorry.
oh, sorry, but for individual apartments, so that they'll be located within kind of the storage cupboards that they have for each of those. And then in terms of PV panels, it's actually determined that we will generate enough energy from those air source heat pumps. So we were not required to do the PV
Okay,
panels.
just one last question. Will they be sold with the flats, with a storage facility with the
Yes,
batteries?
with the batteries.
Yeah.
In
So
some-
that they can store any power? Or will they be run by electric?
I'd have to confirm on that point if that's okay in terms of the storage of the batteries. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Estop.
Just following on from that, will the air source heat pump, will they be provided automatically, or are they going to be offered as an option to buyers?
Provided automatic. Automatic, so it's a part of the sale. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to have a question regarding the viability of the amended scheme. Obviously, you as the applicant have put the GDV percentage as 8.3%, which is quite below the sort of generally accepted level of 15%. Pardon me. I'm just interested in whether you can assure the committee that the amendment is viable going forward. I don't want to necessarily be approving an amendment to something that inevitably is unviable and has to come back to us as a committee, and just it seems relatively low.
Yeah, I mean, the assurance is that we're here today to obviously kind of get this optimization through. If we weren't confident with the scheme, then we wouldn't be sat here today.
Right, thank you very much. I think that's
Thank you.
all questions. Now, speaking on behalf of Hertford Town Council, we have Councillor Alex Darr. And you have, Alex, you have 6 minutes, Alex.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here tonight as leader of Hertford Town Council to put forward the objections of residents across Hertford to this variation on a previously agreed planning application at Marshgate Drive. While I appreciate the applicant's intent to contribute to housing supply, I must express serious concerns regarding the implications for active travel infrastructure and traffic management, which are central to sustainable urban development and the well-being of our residents. This application proposes an increase of 65 additional dwellings, bringing the total to 441 units, more than double the original allocation under the HART2 site policy. This intensification will inevitably lead to a significant increase in traffic volumes, particularly along Mead Lane and Mill Road and Claude Hamilton Way. These roads serve as critical access routes, not only for residents, but also for the employment areas at Dicker Mill and Mead Lane. These areas are vital for local jobs and economic activity, and further congestion risks undermining their viability. Those of us who live locally are only too aware of the traffic congestion along these roads at peak times. The increase in traffic will only increase air pollution, making it harder for air quality in the AQMA in Hertford to be improved. Most importantly, residents living in many flats that have already been built along Mill Road, Mead Lane and Claude Hamilton Way, leading towards the A414, will suffer increased fumes into their living spaces. As you can imagine, when it is hot, as it is now, residents in these flats also need to open windows to let air circulate.
Extra traffic will create a lot of discomfort one way or the other. Additionally, cars will be displaced along the quieter historic back roads leading away from Hertford East, further adding to the congestion due to the narrowness of the streets. And these roads are already being used as runs to keep away from the queues on Ware Road when at peak hours when the traffic's heavy. I'm also disappointed to see that the cycle storage has been moved to a less accessible area in the plan and is not where it was in the consented plan. It's further away from the back, from the front, moved more towards an awkward place at the back of the garages. Also disappointed that some of the green space has been removed from the consented plan to make room for car parking spaces. Given this development is next to a river, it is really important that it includes high quality green space to increase the opportunity of corridors for nature. And we all know the importance of green space for health and well-being. Whilst the number of EV chargers is welcomed, given the air quality issues in Hertford, should we not be asking for more than 10%? In conclusion, approving this variation would be a disservice to the Hertford community without further robust traffic mitigation and active travel commitments. I urge the committee to reject this application as submitted in its current form. Thank you.
Right. Members, do you have any questions? Nope. Thank you very much, Councillor Dart. Now we have Maura Connolly speaking as District Board Councillor, and you have 10 minutes should you require them.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Maura Connolly. I'm the East Herts Councillor for Kingsmead Ward, which will be impacted by this variation. Having been a substitute member of this committee for the past 2 years and completed all the required training, I understand the reasons why our officers have recommended that this application for a variation be approved. We know the council is in a tilted balance, affecting the robust application of the district plan. We know the government has increased the number of dwellings the council needs to build. We know that this development was originally refused planning permission by this committee and that it was overturned at appeal, costing this council a lot of money. We know that Highways at Herts County Council initially recommended refusal for the full development based on the impact on traffic in the area. But in this variation, they recommend approval, despite traffic likely to increase further. Highways are a statutory consultee, so you cannot vote against the variation on traffic concerns. So I'm not here to try to persuade you to refuse this variation. I appeal to you to work this evening to reduce the impact these extra apartments will have on the development itself, local residents and businesses. So one issue of concern to our residents is increased parking in local streets because of the pressure within the development. Those streets are already crammed from parking from commuters and town centre workers. We've seen the dreadful parking on pavements on the Ware Road caused by parking from Liberty Rise development barely a mile away. So we've got clear local evidence of this occurring. We need to have a definite assurance that a residence parking zone, a residence permit zone, will be created at Marshgate Drive, Mead Lane and other roads in the vicinity. There are 2 items in the Section 106 agreement. Transport improvement contribution, that was 495,000 at the initial application, and vehicle parking control for Herts County Council, that was 15,000. In the update to the 106 agreement, please request that this money is specifically spent on an RPZ. Can you ask assurance from Highways at Herts County Council that this money, possibly the 15,000, is used to cover transport improvement, is used to cover traffic regulation orders and road signs for the RPZ. Separately, some of the transport improvement contribution should be specifically allocated to East Herts Council to set up the RPZ. They'll likely need about 25,000. It may be that you need to specify these amounts from the sustainable, accessible and active travel contribution for this variation. Biodiversity opportunities. This is a huge development. Please do not lose the opportunity to install more Swift bricks throughout. If the full planning application was submitted now, I believe we would have requested more than the number offered. The developer has delayed building and will be aware that it is now standard practice to condition more Swift bricks. The location of this development close to Hartham Common in the river makes the Swift bricks more important. Provision of electric car charging points and the option to install more of the infrastructure. Currently 10% of parking spaces and 10% potential to install further. Is it enough? I'm not convinced it is. Bearing in mind the government target of no more petrol or diesel cars from 2030. This development may be fully occupied by then, but will not have the infrastructure it will require only 5 years from now. It is likely that parking spaces will be allocated. So how will a parking space be free for a resident to charge? We have to wait for a design of the EV charging system to be agreed later with the officers. Can we require that the EV charging locations are not taken from the agreed parking numbers in particular allocated spaces? Can we request a much higher number of locations with the infrastructure to install chargers in the future, as we know that infrastructure of any kind is cheaper and easier to build in at the build stage? And this is the electrical infrastructure which will not be easy to retrofit. So please make the most of this call-in and try to find specific improvements to mitigate the effects of the variation on our local residents. It may be that you cannot influence all of these issues, but I hope that you will try. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Now, members, do we have any questions? I see Councillor Dunlop.
I've just got one question. You asked us to ask for more Swift bricks. How many more?
I'm not an expert on Swift bricks, just plenty more. You can't have too many.
Is there any term that you would like us to try and argue for?
Any
term that you would like us to argue for to mean that there are lots more? No.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, if it was a housing development, I'd expect one per property. So many, many more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can come back to that. There are conditions in the report, and I think we can look at those later. Any other questions? Well, I have one question. I was just making notes, and you were suggesting Marshgate Drive, Mead Lane, and another one. I didn't get it written down for our.
Apologies. Other roads in the area. I think there's Spencer Street. There's various on that side.
Yeah, but Marshgate Drive and Mead Lane are the most immediate.
Yes, but we shouldn't exclude the others in the vicinity on that side of town, because then they will be impacted severely as well. So I'm not limiting it to those two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
The debate. Yeah, board issues.
Right, members, time for the debate. I'll allow it to be quite free-flowing, but maybe we can start with principle of development on that sort of side of things. Anyone got? Councillor Estop.
First of all, Chair, I'd like to say how impressive the report is, just to give credit to officers on a very detailed report. On the principle, this is a section 73 application, so we understand what is said about that. You know, the government wanted to give some flexibility to developers if they had to change things, and I can understand that. If it's something like giving a bit longer to implement the landscape or trigger points for road improvements or something, that's the kind of thing that really helps. This condition is just a list of the drawings. And it just doesn't seem to be in the spirit of a Section 73 application, because so the question is, why are the drawings in a condition? Why are they not just listed in the development description?
Okay, so I think that's one that does the case of.
Thank you, Councillor Estop. You can impose conditions that list the drawing numbers, simple for the reason that when you apply for permission for a large scheme, it's entirely likely and possible that changes will need to be made over the course of the development, and you expect to see it in most decision notices that we produce as a local planning authority, and so having a decision that you notice that lists all the conditions would mean that you can reapply to change elements of those. If you don't have a condition that lists the drawing numbers, but you list the drawings within the decision notice, then there's nothing to tie those drawings with the development. You are essentially only approving the description of development. And in this case, that's the operative part of the planning permission, which you cannot amend by way of a Section 73 application. But a Section 73 application, as the report explains, can vary conditions, and it is an entirely common and well-used method of varying a planning permission to come back and change the drawing. So it would be unusual for us not to include a drawing numbers condition. There would have to be very strong planning grounds not to include a drawing number, because if we don't approve the drawings, then the development has got limitless possibilities as to what it could be. And so it's a way of controlling the quality of the scheme and ensuring that when changes do occur, if they occur, there is a way for the local planning authority to control those changes.
Okay, Councillor Stowe.
Thank you. I've got one question. We've not shown it on the board. We've shown some plan drawings and some layouts of the rooms, but there is a section on page 90 of the report that shows the Velux window, or the roof window, you know what I mean, at shoulder height, the bottom of the window. Now, I'd like to know what rooms they're in, because it can't be the living room, surely, because that would be like well, not very good for the health of the people that live there, looking out at the sky all day and they sit in the armchair. So I think it's important we can identify which rooms the Velux or type windows are on.
So on that drawing there, you can see that the majority of the living spaces, that's where the inset terraces are, and the bedrooms and other spaces are served by the roof lights.
You know what I mean, though? I mean, if you were sort of in the kitchen,
yeah,
making food, and the window is right up at your shoulder height, it's not very pleasant, is it? It could almost be bad for people's health and well-being. You know, and the only sort of comparison I can give is actually a prison cell where the windows are up high and you can't see out. All you can see is the sky.
I appreciate that. So on those floor plans there, you can see that the inset terraces are, and the Juliet balconies are serving the living spaces. So that would be the outlook from the living space.
So can we guarantee that all the living spaces will have a Juliet boundary or the inset detail? Yes.
I can double check that, but yeah, I think all of the living spaces should be served by inset terraces or Juliet balconies.
I think you appreciate what my concerns were. Yeah.
Councillor Dunlop. Thank you. Sorry, did I say? I saw. Sorry, Devonshire. Councillor Devonshire. I'm sorry. Senior moment.
I'll change my name there. Thank you, Chair. I want to talk about something that we talk about in this committee a lot, and that's affordable housing and viability. Obviously, our starting position is always 40%. And because of the viability consideration, we're told in this report that if we're lucky, we're going to get 56 shared ownership units. If we're not lucky and we have to go down the cascading mechanism, we might get 20% of the value of 56, I believe, flatted properties. Is that right? It'll be 20% of the value of 56 flatted properties, which where we started from and where we've ended up is a huge change, isn't it? We're not going to get much out of this at all if we go down that cascading mechanism. So my question is, why is this site so unviable? And we've been told by the speaker that it's because of increased material costs. And if that is the case, that applies to every single development in this country, not just this one. So does that mean that throughout this country, we can never get the affordable housing that we require because of increased material costs? If it isn't increased material costs, is it because the land is contaminated? and there's mitigation of that land, but that wasn't what we were hearing. Thank you.
So that was quite a broad question, but I like if officers could have a stab at answering that as well as they could.
So one of the main reasons why this scheme has been deemed unviable is because of the build costs. That's obviously the highest cost for the developer. There was also costs for contamination to decontaminate the site as well prior to this application as well. So,
yeah, I mean, there are a number of major challenges with brownfield development sites. That's Devonshire. I think developing a brownfield site, as Barclays tend to generally do, comes with it a number of major challenges which have a major impact on viability. And so for brownfield developments, you are more likely to see lower numbers of affordable housing in those schemes. This development, when it was considered back in 2020, 15% was the maximum that was considered viable at the time, but then build costs have increased to such a degree that that 15% is no longer viable in today's market. And so this scheme that's before you today offers a more viable development than what planning permission exists for. And the method of securing affordable housing that we've agreed with this developer on this scheme is considered to be the optimum way of securing affordable housing, whilst delivering full Section 106 contributions towards all of the various mitigations that comply with our current and latest guidance for the additional units. And so we've very carefully looked at this and haven't taken that decision lightly. And it is a balance of considering affordable housing provisions with 106 mitigations, so education provision, highways mitigations, and we've ensured that they are fully mitigated in terms of 106, but the affordable housing can be delivered through the cascade approach that's been put forward by this developer.
Okay, I've got Councillor Bull followed by Councillor Copley, followed by Councillor Smith. So,
thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I suppose it's a follow-up from what the officer's just been explaining. But I noticed in the previous application that the percentage of affordable houses, I think, was 15.5%. This time, although in my mind the arithmetic don't add up, we're down to 13.5%. Now, I've been on this committee long enough to know that many years ago, we was working on 40%. You might say it was good old days, but we still got pinned back to 35%, you know, with the big developers. Now, 13.5% with more houses on that site, to me, a lower percentage of affordable houses. We're talking about sustainability. In my brain, the figures don't add up. Thank you, Chairman.
thank you. Do any officers want to come back on that? Or?
No, I suppose it's just to sort of go back to the issue about when the build costs have risen to such a degree that to develop this scheme with all of the challenges, it has not been possible to include any more affordable housing on the basis of the viability. And I think from the presentation, we saw that there is a threshold, there is a target threshold that the planning guidance allows us to form the basis of. And so if a development falls under that 15% minimum profit return, then a development, as obviously my colleague has explained, is unviable. And so this development is close to that 15%, but the previous scheme that benefits from planning permission has even lower viability challenges than the current scheme. And so you have a decision to make today, which is to whether to support a scheme which is more viable than the consented scheme.
Chairman, I'll just come back on that. I've never known of any developers come back and say, no, we're not going to bother with that one.
Mm.
They would come back to you and say, right, we'll get a reduction in affordable housing. I accept what the officers told me, but there's an area there, I feel. Thank you.
And Councillor Bull, I think the council voted to change the term to chair rather than chairman. You should address me as chair rather than chairman.
Sorry, Chair.
That's all right. Councillor Copley.
Thank you. Still on affordable housing and just kind of picking up what Councillor Devonshire was saying about the cascade mechanism. I'd just like to understand how we enforce that mechanism, how we make sure that obviously we are ending up with the best possible situation. I don't know if it's in the 106 or just monitoring the site, but I think that's obviously very important. Thank you.
So in terms of the first step, where the developer has to promote the sale of the 56 units to registered providers, in the heads of terms, we've included an engagement strategy that we're going to try to secure, where the developer's going to have to provide some information to us to explain how they're going to engage with RPs and how they're going to ensure that they do their best to get an RP on board to take on the 56 units. Then, if they've not been able to secure an RP for the 56 units, and we go down the cascade mechanism to the discount market sale dwellings, then also going to ask for a marketing strategy in terms of how they're going to market those 56 discount market sale dwellings. So throughout the whole process of this cascade mechanism, we're getting information from the applicant justifying how they're going to do the utmost to deliver these units as affordable homes.
Thank you.
And next we have Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight, I think this might have been spoken about already, but the non-compliance with PERT 2 policy, increasing vehicle trip generation, the insufficient parking, vehicle charging points, and solar power generation, which is absent here. I did ask earlier, but there wasn't clarity on that, which would need, in my eyes, a battery source for charging too, unless it's going to be run on electric. And we have some of the highest electric bills in the world, actually. I just wondered how that fits in with your, and also just to finish up, the insufficient bird bat box, obviously that's an importance to me. Thank you.
Yeah, if we could look at the, I think first we're looking at the energy efficiency. Is that the?
I can come back on that first. So the policies in the district plan, so policy CC2 is the relevant policy, most relevant policy for sustainable design. And that policy requires developments to encourage carbon emissions to be minimised and encourages those to be beyond building regulations. In this case, the developer proposes to build the units in a fabric first approach, and there are some air source heat pumps that are supposed to be provided. Through those measures, the carbon emission reduction would be beyond building regulations, so there is compliance with the relevant policies in the district plan.
And can I come back on that? That we've mentioned that again, the carbon reduction. Is this reduction compared with conventional building, or is this?
It's compared with building regulations. So their sustainability statement sets out the calculations and sets out that through, as I said, fabric first approach and the provision of air source heat pumps in some of the buildings, they would achieve carbon reduction beyond building regulations.
So the significant thing is that they're meeting our
district plan
policies,
yeah,
and they're by being more efficient than building regs, if that makes sense. So we have Councillor Dunlop. Oh my goodness, who is for Councillor? We have Councillor Hill and then Councillor Dunlop.
Well, mine was on heat pumps, so if you wanted to,
if you
continue that thread.
Can I do a viability one?
I think I'll do them as on the order that the hands came up. Then, Councillor Thomas, did you spot? I got Councillor Hill, then Councillor.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're going to go right to left. Hill, Estop, Dunlop, and Devonshire.
Thank you, Chair. Very clear. But I'm going two things. Just on the solar panels, I get what you're saying, but the cheapest way to install solar panels is during a build, cheaper than building them in fields and everything. And even if they were carbon neutral, it would pay back to the CO2 output of actually building the buildings over the lifetime of the buildings. I would still like to see them in there because it make, of course, a positive contribution to the CO2 emissions of the actual fabric of the building, that a lot of materials in a building. So that's one point. The second point is on the cycle infrastructure. One of the aims is to increase the east-west down the Lee Valley, which is great because it's pretty poor. But there's no detail in what level you want to increase it to. So there's a government paper, it's the local transport note cycle infrastructure, which states minimum width of cycle paths. And I would prefer to see some detail about what the ambition is to raise that cycle path width to, and what level of that transport plan. Because as a regular user of it, I know there's a lot of angst between dog walkers, cyclists and walkers. And the whole point of that thing is to reduce that. So I'd like to see some ambition in that target and something set in stone saying we will make the minimum width restrictions or the minimum for shared use, pedestrian and cycle.
Okay, could I have you? Could we park the second question until we start discussing active travel and stuff? And because I think we had some more questions that were on the farmer topic. Councillor Estop.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to carry on the line of discussion that Councillors Devonshire, Bull and Copley have been discussing, and that is the viability and the affordable housing. The report has a lot about affordable housing, but the application doesn't, is for flats that have no affordable housing within them. We're being asked to review the situation for the whole development, which is already set. But as Councillor Bull said, it's making it worse. The overall percentage has gone down. So effectively, are we being asked to approve a negative affordable housing?
No, my understanding is that it's these 66 new units, residences, will not have any affordable housing.
That's what I understand. So overall,
there's not a reduction in the previous expansion.
No, but overall the percentage goes down, as Councillor Bull pointed out.
Yes.
So effectively, we're being asked to approve a negative.
No, we're being asked to approve a zero.
So the other part of my question is that I contacted officers before the meeting, and they kindly directed me to the bit of the NPPF that talks about viability, because I wanted to understand to what extent we have to consider viability. And, so I want to just confirm whether the section that is relevant is paragraph 009, and it's headed, how should viability be reviewed during the lifetime of a project? And it includes the sentence, realization of risk does not in itself necessitate further viability assessment or trigger a review mechanism. Review mechanisms are not a tool to protect a return to the developer. In the presentation, we saw just that. We saw the return, we learned about the return to the developer. So can I ask whether we are being asked to go beyond what is in the NPPF?
Right, so I'm wondering if I want to bring in planning or legal here. I think we'll go planning first.
So the district plan and the NPPF, they consider that viability is a material consideration in this, and so this application takes that into account. The viability of this development that we've gone through and touched upon in the report identifies that on the current basis, a scheme without any affordable housing is not a viable development, and so in theory, you are being asked to approve a development which has an alternative affordable housing provision secured into it than what was consented previously, and so you have to compare the two schemes together. A previous scheme which has been discussed and set out in the report and in the presentation is unviable, more unviable than a current scheme which provides more housing but provides a cascade mechanism for delivery of affordable housing that essentially aims to deliver the same quantum of affordable housing ultimately. And so you're taking a balanced judgment as to whether the current application is a preferable scheme or is not a preferable scheme. And obviously the report goes into some detail in offering the reason for why, in officers' view, that you are encouraged to support the current scheme because the previous scheme is unviable and to our mind is less likely to be implemented. And so that's a consideration that we've duly weighted in this process. And so you've got to weigh up the respective benefits of both schemes and come to a view on it.
Right, now Councillor Dunlop.
And the NPPF?
Oh. Yeah, you had Councillor Estop mentioned a quoted from the NPPF. If you could give us your quote again. And I think
so it's in the section how should viability be reviewed during the lifetime of a project? So I think we are in the lifetime of a project. It carries a phrase, realization of risk does not in itself necessitate further viability assessment or trigger a review mechanism. Review mechanisms are not a tool to protect a return to the developer, but to strengthen local authorities' ability to comply with policies.
Right, I'm going to bring in
Thank you,
Rachel.
Chair. You're correct, that is paragraph 9, but the preceding paragraph of the PPG talks about how viability assessment should be treated in decision making. And in that paragraph, it says that the weight to be given to a viability assessment, as the planning officers has explained, is a matter for the decision maker, having regard to all the circumstances in the case. So as you've heard, viability from the outset on the appeal scheme was a material consideration. It obviously is still a material consideration, and it's not in this case a consideration of reviewing the viability of a scheme. As the officer has explained, what you're really looking at is a comparison to what's consented and what's before you to determine this evening.
Okay. Councillor Dunlop, what topic are you going to?
Heat pumps.
Heat pumps.
Heat
Yes,
pumps.
we're back to.
Can I just double check that the heat exchangers for the heat pumps are not attached to the external walls, and in fact they are somewhere else? I wondered whether there would have been a community heat hub. It's just I don't see any diagrams or showing where the heat exchanger would actually be.
So all the flats have quite generous cupboard spaces. So that's where the heat pumps would be installed. And I think the developer said that then there'd be connection upwards, and that's where. Yeah.
The actual heat exchanger, which extracts the energy from the air, will be not in the flat. It will be in a basement and then hot water piped up. I'm just trying to understand. I just want to make sure that we don't pass something that we think looks nice and then all of a sudden there's heat pumps exchangers, which are considerable, as Professor Smith said, battered all over it. I don't understand how it works.
There's no external plant proposed. The heat pumps are all internal in the building envelope.
Yeah, I don't understand how you get the air in to extract the energy from it. But I think that's probably a technical thing. And
can we see on the plan
So
where they would be?
We're not engineers, so we can't explain to you the ins and outs of that. But that will be covered by building regulations as well. And so, you know, the details of the air source heat pumps will be a condition, and so we've got the ability to make sure that specifications would be appropriate and wouldn't be, not a working piece of equipment.
I'm sure it'll work, but aesthetically it'll look all right.
Okay, let's Martin.
Yeah, I am no expert. Just with that caveat, I think it, as I understand, the heat pumps connects to the ventilation system, so it uses the ventilation as the heat source. How that actually manifests itself into the actual design, I can't advise you, but I think that's in principle how it works. But
I think
the caveat that I'm not an expert.
I remember reading there was some worry from the Canals and Rivers Trust about grills, etc., facing the canal, and they've been reassured that that won't be the case. I'm aware that Councillor Devonshire had a question, so oh, Councillor Stowe, I didn't see you. Yes, I'll bring in Councillor Devonshire, and then Councillor Stowe, and then whoever raised your hands, I didn't see you, so raise them again. All right, Hill and Est up after.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go on to a different subject, if that's okay with you. On to EV charger provision. Which...
In that case, Councillor Stowe, did you have a question? We'll just circle back to viability and then we'll.
On the viability, we normally talk about having assessments as the job goes on. Could you confirm that is the case here? And it's always an upward, not a downward. And with the heat pumps, the lady did quite clearly say that they'd be internal, but my concern is noise. So what are we doing about that?
On the viability question, there is no viability review mechanism in this application. I think because it's relatively clear where the affordable housing is likely to go, and the lifetime of this development isn't the longest build, and so one hasn't been secured in this application.
Just going to say, in terms of any noise, the environmental health officer was consulted on it. It hasn't raised any concern with noise generation from the air source heat pumps. As we said, they're all internal. So, yeah.
Okay.
It just worries me that they might be on the roof. We don't know from the application where the heat pumps will go. There's no sign of where they'll be in there. I don't know whether they're wall mounted or what, but there's a risk that they'll be on the roof, and I wonder whether we can make sure there's a condition that says no roof plant.
Yeah, so it seems reasonable. And I'm aware you had a question, Councillor Hill. Have you got a related question?
Just on heat pumps and how they work. I mean, I've just done some training this week on energy efficiency, and there's an enormous difference in an internal heat pump and an external one. And I got that explained to me. The internal ones actually sit inside the water cylinder, heat directly, and they pull air from the outside, but they also pull the moist air from the inside. So they're very small, and maybe just it sounds like we need a bit of education as a group on something we can arrange.
I think, well, I mean,
just for
we do run the risk of moving into the territory of building regulations. So after the meeting, maybe we'll speak to officers. Councillor Devonshire, no.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Connolly actually mentioned this, and I think she's absolutely spot on. The EV charger provision is 10% of the parking spaces, with possibly another 10% later. If that's built in at the construction stage, first of all, I don't think it's enough. And secondly, as it's a flatted development, I don't know how you're going to retrofit it. It's easy if it's a house, but in a flatted development, how do you retrofit all that without ripping all the footpaths and the verges up and that? So my question would be, why don't we insist on more EV, at least more EV chargers? If not, there is one way around this, and that is to insist the cables are put in, the cables are there, and then later on you could put the chargers in. Thank you.
Can start answering that if that's okay. James, you want to look at condition 15, because I think condition 15 includes the details of EV charges. Policy sets that 10% is all we can require under the district plan. We can look at a form of wording that requires details of how you secure passive provision is provided, which means that they can, as you say, fit cables internally to make sure that they're future proofed, and we can require the details of future proofing for cables to be installed, or yes, future proofing for cables to be installed, not necessarily the cables being installed themselves, but it's making sure that the design will enable them to be installable in the future. Yeah.
And I'm aware that we have got an outstanding question from Councillor Hill about the cycling provision. And are we ready to go on to the...
Can I just ask one question on the EV charging again?
Right.
But on the truck, and this is probably a bit too detailed at the moment, because the best way to charge an EV is on a trickle feed. That's the best thing to extend the life of a battery. So if you're only providing 10 and it's trickle feed and you have to do them overnight, that does seem inadequate. If they're fast chargers, yes, that would be probably adequate, but that's not the best way to charge a car. That's the type of thing you do in a motorway when you've shorter time. So I think for a commercial development, as a residential development, there should be more trickle feed chargers, because that is the most efficient way of keeping your battery healthy.
I think this might be something that we don't really have in the district, that level of detail in the two condition.
No, it doesn't. The district plan doesn't require a minimum standard of an EV charger. Guidance is changing in this all the time, as is design for EV chargers, and so because the technology is improving all the time, it's more likely that this development will include a more up-to-date technology than what would have been installed 5 years ago. Fast chargers in residential developments are generally not as suitable because of the power demands and the design. And so for a residential scheme, it's more likely to be a trickle feed, or more likely to be a charger which is fit for a residential use that charges overnight. For a commercial build, you're more likely to see a fast or rapid charger. But policies are changing as well. So as policies change, we'll be able to secure the latest at the time.
Councillor Copley, you've been quite patient there.
That's all right. I just thought, as we're now talking about EV charge, if we could talk about transport, I think that would be a useful thing, because I saw about the highways. Obviously, they've made comments as saying there's a limited uplift in trips, and obviously we've heard some information from the applicant as well. But I'm personally very surprised that this wouldn't have a negative impact on the traffic. And so obviously Councillor Connolly made the point about having, you know, residential parking permit zone, and I just wondered, is that the only option? And also she said about putting in the section 106, is that an option to go in there as well? Is that a viable thing we could do? Because I'd just like to think about, is there anything to limit people parking in surrounding roads, which I think they will do.
I think this opens up quite a few questions in a way, because that RPZ one is something I felt that you would need to do a survey of residents before you could, you know, so you couldn't really condition something that was conditional on.
I suppose I'm just asking, what are the options here for us in terms of conditions, etc., and then RPZ as an option could be done there.
So I think we can bring in Jackie Bruce, or section 106.
Yeah. The original section 106 does have a contribution that was paid to county for a controlled parking zone. That money has been paid, and I'm working with county to actually implement it. To implement it, we have had to revise the parking strategy. At the moment, section 106 contributions are being used to fund the surveys and consultations to feed into a revised parking strategy, which will then provide the guidance and procedure on how we can actually implement controlled parking zones going forward. So we do have funding to actually do controlled parking zones in the area specified in the original section 106. So I'm hoping that that satisfies you.
Sorry, do we think that'll be enough money, given that we're now talking about more houses? Will that be enough money, or is there an uplift to or dwellings?
I think it will be enough money. Only because all traffic regulation orders do take time and implementation. Through doing the actual traffic parking strategy, that will give us the basis and the consultation and survey work to back up the need for the controlled parking zone. So we won't have to do any extra consultations. There will be local consultations. It won't be a big thing. So I'm confident that the £15,000 will cover that. We do have other parking contributions in the area from Tamworth Road, which can actually then feed into a bigger plan.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Devonshire, but I'm aware that we have a very topical question from earlier from Councillor Hill on cycling, but I'll hear Councillor Devonshire's question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a very quick one. Going on to the future proofing of EV chargers. I'm sorry, I'm going back a stage. Is there going to be enough power supply to provide that that future proofing of EV chargers within the development? Thank you.
So, the detail of the power will form part of the condition discharge, and so we can't necessarily answer that today, but because of the direction of travel, it seems to be sensible that you would want to make sure there would be sufficient power supply available should more EV chargers come on board as things progress. So it's a detail that we can require in the condition submission, but it's very difficult to answer today.
Right, so circling back to Councillor Hill's question about cycling, how would you put it, Councillor Hill? Because it's been so long since we had your question. If maybe you just put it again.
Well, in a lot of these debates, we have reference to.
And if you move your microphone a bit closer to you.
In a lot of these discussions, we have reference to increasing the cycling infrastructure, but it doesn't say to what standard. And there is a UK guidance document on this, and if anyone uses that towpath, it's not up to that standard. It's anywhere near it. It's basically the ambition we have for that. If we truly want to have that change in modality, we need to meet that standard. And there's no guidance that just says improve it. Well, improving it can mean anything. It's such an open-ended thing. So I'd like to see it being more defined and improve it to what level of standard against that guidance.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's land owned by the Canals and Rivers Trust. But Jackie, Bruce, have you got anything to say about the Section 106 provision for the towpath? Oh, no.
I can probably come back on a couple of those points. So the original scheme proposed to increase the towpath width along the northern site boundary to 3 metres, and the plans actually show the increased width of the towpath along that boundary of the site. There's also obviously a financial contribution which could go towards other improvements along the towpath, and the Canal and River Trust have identified a number of areas along this stretch of towpath where there are repairs and improvements that need to be undertaken. So some of the sustainable transport contribution could go towards some of those repairs along the towpath.
Is that conditioned quite clearly that it would be specifically for spending on the towpath?
The heads of terms refer directly to improvements to the towpath.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Hill.
So just for information to all the councillors here and members of the public, according to the local government network cycling plan, the shared use path, pedestrian and cyclists together, the absolute minimum width is 3 metres. So we're meeting, and that's during low flows. And this is not a low flow path. It's used extensively by multiple different user groups. But I still think our ambition is very low in that aspect. And I don't think we're ever going to see any real change in our modality habits until people stop cycling over my dogs. And
Councillor Marlowe, Councillor Estop, then Councillor Stowe.
Following on from the cycle path there, I mean, the logic suggests to me that you would improve from Hertford to Ware, not the other way. Can we just make that part of the condition? Because it would be a shame to see the foot or the path improved further up where the cycling becomes much less easy. But if we made that access between Hertford and Ware better, that would be very good.
I can come back on that. So the heads of terms, I can read the heads of terms out. They say improvement works to the Hertford to Ware Canal towpath to enhance access between the development, Hartham Common, Hertford Town Centre and Ware. So that's where the contribution would have to go to. And as I said, the Canal and River Trust have identified a number of areas along the towpath that need improvement, and these funds could go towards those projects.
Councillor Estop.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, there's quite a lot of reference to the cycle parking for the flats being relocated, and I wondered if officers could show us where the changes have taken place, and in particular, block AB.
That's the floor plan for building A/B, and you can see the cycle store is at the front. Is at the front of the building. It's to the right hand side of the orange flat. Shall I? Point. Wait, whereabouts? This is the. And that's the proposed layout for building A and B. You can see the cycle store's been moved to the rear of the building.
Can you tell me what's around? Because we've got the floor plan, but we don't see what's around that.
So there would be pedestrian access round the building, and then you could collect your bike, and then you're directly onto the towpath because that's the canal side of the site. So that's the sort of space between the apartment blocks, and so there's pedestrian access around there, where you could collect your bikes, and then you'd have access onto the towpath.
Okay, is that clear? Councillor Stowe, I've just.
You always seem to forget me, Chair, don't you?
Sorry. Sorry, everyone's clustered around that way.
I know, you don't use that way.
We're going to have to swap you into that side somehow.
I just wondered about, a lot of our speakers today mentioned about congestion on the roads, and obviously our Highways Authority have given us a clear picture they're not concerned about it. We're talking about lack of parking on the site, and Highway Safety in the papers that they were disappointed it wasn't lower. So, I mean, we can't ignore what they're saying, can we? I mean, can we? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, perhaps we could just talk about that tension between the argument that it's actually not enough parking, and equally it's too much parking.
I think a balance has to be struck between providing enough parking on site to meet the demand from the development, but then also limiting car parking to try and discourage people to use their cars. And we think that they've struck the right balance in this application. We acknowledge the Highway Authority are suggesting they would like to see less car parking. That's in light of sort of changing policy in the last 5 years. But we think that the appropriate balance has been struck, as I said, in terms of parking.
I think the problem is, though, is that the wish and the intention is going faster than what people are thinking about it. So people still want the cars, and we can't make it go away by just forcing the issue. We've got to be mindful of that, and just giving lack of parking, as people have said around this room, they're going to park anywhere they can put their car. We know it's going to happen. It happens elsewhere in Hertford.
Yeah, we've got Councillor Marlowe and I think Councillor Estop.
Yeah, just a quick one. I might have missed this. Is there a allocated bike space for every flat?
There's one cycle space per flat.
Right, Councillor Estop.
I just wanted, so we got this drawing is very helpful, thank you. But in the report, we have the landscape plan. Is this the middle block or the one on the left in looking at the plan?
It's the building on the right.
It's the one on the right?
So it's the one on the eastern side of the site.
Okay, so on the left of this one, that's where the parking is going to be put. That's where the green space goes and parking goes in, is that right?
So that is the area where there's some additional on-street parking proposed. Councillor Hill.
Just on the cycle parking, you probably realise there's quite an increase in the use of things like cargo bikes now. You know, it's a provision for cycle parking for larger bikes like that, which are also very valuable, so they're better. They need a lot more protection. You know, they cost a lot of money and they're easily stolen.
And can I ask, just to follow up on that, I mean, having had my or parts of my bike stolen from a flat in that area, how secure are these parking?
I don't know the exacts in terms of how they would be secured, but I would imagine that they would be fob security for the residents residents only to access the cycle stores.
Yeah,
and they're only accessed externally. You can't access them internally from the building.
Yeah, so they would be anyway described as secure bike parking. And Councillor Hill, no. Councillor.
Wait a minute, don't get him. What's your name?
But I can't, I have to suspend business a little bit. I'm going to do that, but I'll still have to have him back.
Yeah.
Councillor Hill, I propose, and does we have a 5 minute. Is 5 minutes enough? 5 minute comfort break. Does anyone second that? Right, seconded by Councillor Copley. And quick vote. Anyone against? Abstentions? Okay, we're going to have a break 5 minutes for. Councillor Councillor Estop.
Thank you, Chair. So while we have the landscape master plan up,
Oh, wait a minute, stop. We don't have Councillor Thomas, but so he was out of my eye line there.
Chair, you've got to get crippled in.
Yeah. Oh, here he is. Right. We'll start again. Councillor Estop and then Councillor Copley.
thank you, Chair. On the landscape master plan, first of all, I wonder, could we just have confirmation from the officers about the increased on-street parking that we read about in the report? And secondly, is it possible to get a plan that shows why the podium's been increased on the northwest block?
Come back on those points. So in terms of the increased parking, there's increased on-street parking in that area that I identified before. So between building A, B and building C, D, the north. And then there's also another 7 on-street spaces along the spine road. And the other spaces are all within the podiums and how the podiums have been reconfigured. In terms of the enlarged podium, we can have a look at the floor plan of that building to show you the enlarged podium. So it's been enlarged in that top left-hand corner, and that area there is mainly housing sort of fire safety infrastructure, but then obviously the parking's also been reconfigured in this block.
Councillor Copley.
So I was thinking while we were actually looking at the landscape thing, which we've moved on, but could we just talk a bit about biodiversity? Because I think we think there isn't a 59.8% net gain, but I'd just like a little bit more detail about that and also consider whether there's anything we can do coming back to like the Swift bricks, bat bricks, adding any more of those things or anything else we can do to increase the biodiversity net gain here, please. Thank you.
So the biodiversity net gain is at 59.8%, I think, and that's largely provided through the new areas of soft landscaping that would be provided on the site, the new tree planting. Obviously, at the moment, the site's brownfield land, so this is quite a good habitat enhancement on the site. In terms of the bird boxes and bat boxes, we've got a condition. I think it's condition 50. 56, where we're seeking an updated scheme for bird boxes and bat boxes, because we acknowledge that the proposed provision in this application is quite modest for a development of this scale. So we're looking to secure more bird and bat boxes through that condition.
Councillor Hill.
So I think some of the clarity around this is that a Swift won't use a bird box, but a small bird will use a Swift brick. So it's more advantageous to put Swift bricks in because all birds will use that. Whereas if you only put bird boxes in, you sort of exclude Swifts. So I just think more specifically just saying Swift bricks, which covered all birds.
Is that something we could do to, be a bit clearer on Swift bricks? The condition's quite vague at the moment, and I think members would like some input, a bit more sort of.
We can probably update it to say integrated bird and bat boxes or Swift bricks. We'll probably update.
Yeah, we could also include. We could also include reference to the minimum number being 20. Probably looking at a form of words to agree and an additional bricks above that, but because we don't have the policy guide to say what number should be provided at the moment, all we can do is require efforts to optimise the number of Swift bricks, but 20 being the minimum. That's what's been explained to us in the submission. So.
Councillor Estop.
Can I go on to the external changes and the appearance of the building?
Yep.
Notice in the report there's reference to this, reference to the infilling between the gables, creating a kind of crown roof, which I think means sort of pitches going around like this, and then a flat top, or and comments from the design officer. So, I mean, this is just my observation, but comparing the before and afters, as it were, the scheme as approved has this very clear concept of gables. There's a rhythm of gables. They're all clear against the sky. It makes a good skyline. And then the arrangement of the elevation beneath the gables is orderly. There are rows, vertical rows. With the changes at the top of the gable, a window or balcony goes in and disrupts that order on the gable elevation. And then by filling in the gaps between the gables, the skyline that was there is lost, and we just have a flatter sort of top. And I think the point in the report saying that the roof lights and inset terraces create clutter, from what we've seen on the presentation, that seems quite right to me. So I'm sorry, that's not a question, but that's my observation about the external changes.
Yeah, if you could come in on the design.
Thank you. Yeah, the comments from the design officer were raised throughout the course of the pre-application period, and then when the application was submitted. As part of the work that we did with the applicant and the design team, and this was to explore the most sensitive ways of looking at the rooftop and looking at ways of extending the roof without extending the overall height of the development, and by infilling the voids between the roof, as you can see on the bottom image. The roof that's a flat elevation. That wouldn't be what anyone would be experiencing when stood at the ground level. Probably the better image is the CGI image where you're looking at it from the side, and you would look at the roof taper back. And so that's a perfectly regular way of extending a roof, or how you would have two gable roofs that would be met by a roof in the middle. And so that method of infilling the roof voids was considered acceptable at that stage. In terms of the additional fenestration within the roofs, we did look at ways of including dormer windows that are coming out of the roof and projecting outwards, but we felt that would have introduced further visual clutter that would have added additional scale, that would have additional sort of fussiness on the elevations. And so by insetting the balconies and respecting the forms of the roof and the envelope of the development, we felt that was the best solution. The urban design officer, I think, was raising concerns in light of other issues about the internal qualities, but as you've heard today, and as set out clearly in the report, that all of the rooms and the accommodation within the roof meets the National Described Space Standards. They provide adequate levels of sunlight, daylight that is above the minimum level that's required, and the overheating assessment that's been carried out indicates that they're subject to details of mechanical ventilation and other methods, that they are providing a sufficient standard of quality. And so in our judgment, we felt that those concerns over the additions to the roof and the little inset terraces and roof lights, we felt that was the best and optimum solution that was arrived at through a course of assessment and interrogating the layout and looking at alternatives. And so we felt we've got the best solution.
Councillor Devonshire, I haven't forgotten you, Councillor Copley. You didn't? No, Councillor Devonshire, and then Councillor Estop, and Councillor Stowe will wave frantically at me if I've forgotten him.
Thank you, Chair. On the same subject, I hear what the officer says, but I believe all the new flats are Velux type windows, aren't they? So you're always looking at the sky. So in the winter, you're looking at dark grey skies. In the summer, you're baking hot. Are there any windows? Am I wrong in that? In the inside, have we got different types of windows that aren't the Velux? All they do is they look up at the sky all the time. I believe all the new flats are like that.
So the inset terraces will obviously have windows and doors across, so that will provide outlook. I think only 5 of the units don't have inset terraces. The ones that don't have inset terraces have Juliet balconies with doors, so that's providing outlook and light as well.
So yeah, I think it's the bedrooms that have these skylights, and maybe what about bathrooms? Are they? Yeah. Councillor Estop.
We're talking about these flats on a particularly hot day, so it makes us, when you're high up in the building, things get hotter anyway. These are all single aspects. I think they're all, maybe not all of them are, but most of them are single aspect, which means it's much harder to get air circulating. That if they're relying on mechanical ventilation, that means, you know, we're approving. Does that mean that we are having that's proposed flats that rely on fans for that cooling?
So an overheating assessment was submitted with the application that says, in order to meet building regulations, mechanical ventilation and certain specification of glazing is required to meet overheating regulations.
And would that be compliant with policy?
Yes, so part of policy CC1 requires developments to minimise potential for overheating, and by providing the mechanical ventilation and the specification of certain glazing, we believe that overheating would be, the potential for overheating would be minimised. So that policy is complied with.
Right, members. Councillor Dunlop.
I was saving this one to last. I noticed in the 106 there's various monies for community halls and things like that. But I visited the site yesterday and again today and noticed that there's a scout group just across the river, and wondered whether they could be mentioned in particular, because we're going to put a lot of people in here. Generating a community would be a really good thing for the well-being of everyone that's living there. So making sure that the scout group gets some of that money, I would encourage in some way. Maybe it's provisioned for already within the 106 and it's just a matter of them applying for it, but I would just want to make sure that it's possible.
I didn't declare this earlier, but I'm not going to get involved in any of the discussion of the. By being Mayor of Hertford, I am honorary president of Hertford Scouts. So,
well, can I direct the question to the 106 officer then?
At the moment, the supplemental community centre provision contribution of £45,729, which will increase when triggered for payment because it's index linked from May 2020, is to go towards the provision of facilities, improvements and maintenance of Pinehurst Community Centre and or other community centre facilities in Hertford, including Beam, as used by the residents of the development. That should actually cover it. If necessary, we can put community centre facilities would include scout huts because it's a community centre facility.
Okay,
so,
as long as the provision is there that will allow them to get the money, that's. I'm
I've
happy
got
with
the
that.
infamous and or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no. Have there been any hands that I've missed there? I think I would like to. I think when we're on DMC, we're sort of so conditioned to not express any opinion about an application, but now we can express an opinion about an application, and I would quite welcome any at this stage of the debate any views you have and how you're forming your opinion. And I've got Councillor Dunlop, then Councillor Estop.
I'm for this because it means that we don't carve up any more of our lovely green belt. It's a site that's obviously meant for accommodation. And I actually welcome the increase in the numbers, because for every person that lives here, we protect our natural environment.
Councillor Estop.
We have a planning permission in place that has been in place for a number of years. They started it. I think it's really disappointing that there's been 4 years of nothing happening on site, that is. We mustn't forget that it's the developer's responsibility to deliver housing. It's not ours to sort it out. So we have a planning permission. If we are looking at that permission and we're looking at how this compares, the proposal, the extra flats lead to a worsening of some bike parking, we read in the report. It leads to a loss of some green space and an increase in surface level car parking, so more hard surface and more cars around. In my view, it detracts from the appearance of what's already got permission, because of the putting roofs on top and kind of interfering with the clarity of the gable elevations. And we have something that worsens an already really bad affordable housing provision. And we're being asked to help a developer for whom this is not their first rodeo, we have heard, and they are in partnership with National Grid and they are used to this kind of thing. And I can't really believe that this is a viability issue that we need to be considering. But I'm so aware that when we look at all the issues we've been talking about and what the report is saying, that although we have these worsenings, nothing is bad enough to refuse permission. And so we have a rubbish scheme that's not bad enough to give permission, and so we grant permission. That's the way I've been seeing it with this discussion.
Anyone else? Councillor Stowe.
I've got confused here this evening because we're looking at 66 units. We're not looking at a whole site. And we keep talking about the whole site and the parking and everything else. And we should be concentrating surely on the 66 units and some of the changes that are happening, minor changes. And it's only here tonight because it's been called in. Normally officers would have dealt with this one quite happily. And I just think, I don't know, I think we're talking too long.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of the development. I think some of the omissions for me is the lack of inclusion of solar panels when it's very cheap to do, and it's the most direct way of generating, cheapest way of generating electricity now. And I think all building companies should be doing it just as an act of goodwill, because building buildings take a lot of CO2. I think our ambition and cycle infrastructure is poor. That's not part of the actual direct plan, though, so we can't impose it in that. And what's been the big revelation for me today is the fact that brownfield infill sites can actually reduce the amount of affordable housing because of the cost of decontamination. This is the next gas sites. I imagine they were quite high, which obviously doesn't alleviate the chronic need for cheaper housing in this area, you know, and which is something that came to me today from a girl at my work. It's a personal story, who's renting. I said, I'm now looking to buy because my rent is actually more than buying a house would be. You know, so there's a shortage of affordable rent, there's a shortage of affordable houses to buy, and it's not very good for people. And you know, I work for a company where we pay well. You know, that these people are struggling.
Yes.
But that's more of a political point. You're non-political. I do apologise.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to back what Councillor Estop said. Rubbish design, but it's necessary, and There's certain things about it which I think in the initial stages I would have said no way, but at this stage it's 66 edition. It's probably common sense to go along and do something with this brownfield site. I agree with what you said.
I think we're slowly winding down on the debate, and I quite welcome anyone to make a proposal. And this would be a proposal with the minor amendments to conditions that we set out. So if it would be condition, in fact, if I could have the officer, have you made a note of, if the officer could just give us a run through.
So additional condition concerning plant and machinery on the rooftop of the building. Update to condition 15 in terms of electric vehicle charging and need to install infrastructure for passive charging. And then an update to condition 56, the burden back box condition.
Are you happy to? Oh.
And the legal agreement the heads of terms updated to refer to the scout route.
Okay, if you're.
I'm happy to propose as detailed there.
Yep. And do I have a seconder? Well, yes, you have to be very specific what you're proposing.
I'm proposing that we accept the application as with the conditions as specified just now.
And do I have a seconder?
Sorry,
Sorry,
Chair, just to interrupt, apologies. I think we just need to be clear on that last point about the section 106. I presume it's to do with the community centre provision contribution. It wouldn't be appropriate to direct funds to a particular group, but to a community centre facilities, it is appropriate.
Yes, so we'll take that as the change of. Are you happy to?
Yeah, I'm happy with that change.
And does.
Can I just say, I wasn't actually proposing a change. It's just that the wording does cover other community centre facilities in Hertford, which does include the Scout Hut, which is what I meant.
Yeah, I think that's how I understood it initially, actually, as well. So we're just going to those changes in conditions. Is that right? And you're proposing that the application is granted.
Yeah.
Yes, and Councillor Marlow, you're seconding that. So we're quite clear. We're voting to grant planning permission. Can I have a show of hands for? Nice and high.
1, 2, 3, 4, 8,
Well,
9.
And against? And abstentions? Thank you. So I declare planning permission granted. There is no urgent business. So members, that concludes the agenda. I declare the meeting closed at 9:16.
Yeah.